Hey everybody, welcome back to Video So Tarek, and I got an interesting episode for you guys this Monday because this was supposed to be a Portal 64 FPGA testing video. I had done the voiceover, I had uploaded the footage, I had everything ready to release to you guys, talking about the Portal 64 First Slice demo and how it performed on MiSTer FPGA. Unfortunately, last week the Portal 64 project was killed due to some IP issues, and that is just such a heartbreaking thing to have to tell everybody, even though I'm pretty sure the news is already out there. I wanted to take one last chance to talk about Portal 64 and kind of talk about what's been going on in gaming in general lately with some of these issues. But this, to the start, was an absolutely spectacular feat of engineering. Getting Portal 64 demade down to the Nintendo 64 was nothing short of magic. Watching this demo improve, testing it on MiSTer FPGA, I was having an absolute blast, and I was so looking forward to releasing new videos as this project got updated. Unfortunately, First Slice is also going to be Last Slice because Portal 64 is dead. Long live Portal 64. Now, I know I've done videos in the past about emulation, about remaking things, and about some of the intellectual property and entertainment law rights behind these sort of things. Now, as a background, I have taught entertainment law, copyright law, and other styles of that in a college environment to college students. I am not a lawyer, I have just taught the classes. But this is a really unfortunate thing to happen. It's a very interesting thing as well. The maker of this put a video up talking about it, but it comes down to using Nintendo libraries in regards to the development of this. Think basically libraries that you would get in a software development kit or otherwise. And that is why it is so important to have modern SDKs that do not rely on anything that was made back in the day. Now, for the most part, using these things never seems to present much of a problem. It's only when you try to demake, remake, or otherwise use properties from an existing property where the developer seems to take issue with it. Valve has been very friendly to these type of things in the past, and there's no reason to think that they wouldn't be very friendly to them in the future. But when it involves Nintendo as a third party that could take umbrance with this, I can totally see why something like this could happen. That does not mean it's not at all disappointing or heartbreaking. I'm sure it is, and I'm just the one testing it. I'm not the maker. I'm sure for him this is even a bigger of a blow, but he did say in his video that he wasn't surprised that something like this could happen. And pretty much all of these projects, I'm sure the developers keep in the back of their mind that at any point in time that legal cease and desist letter or that conversation with the legal department can and will happen. And having dealt in entertainment for a very long time, I have been on the opposite end of that conversation where somebody is taking something that they should not be. That's not this instance here. It is completely different, but I understand why companies do want to protect their properties, and Valve's been getting a 10 out of 10 for forever as far as letting people play around with what they've made. They celebrate it, so don't hate Valve too much. But this does seem to still be indicative of this current change of the mood in gaming. There's been a lot of takedowns recently, a lot of new things developing, and I still really do feel like there's certain companies out there that are hankering and itching for a legal fight where they could potentially set a new precedent about what is and isn't permittable with your games. I didn't want to make this an emulation is illegal kind of video and talk about that because that's not what we're really doing here. We're just celebrating a project that unfortunately showed so much promise and is going to have to be left at the stage that you currently see it in. But what a project it was. To get this far is amazing. The performance, the upgrades, the fact that it runs an FPGA and on real hardware, the level of talent, expertise, and sheer passion to bring something like this to fruition in its current state should absolutely be celebrated. Gaming needs more things like this, not less. Fans taking it upon themselves to give new, different, and varied experiences so that people who love these games and love these consoles will have new things to play for years to come. But I am still worried that there is this current that is basically trying to make this not possible, and it's definitely coming from certain companies. But we'll have to see what happens in the next year or so, because the first and second time I did these videos, people seem to think that maybe I was doing some sort of fear-mongering tactic for clicks. I definitely am not. I want to see all of these things succeed, and I do feel like there's this current going on right now that's very unfriendly to projects such as this. But the fact that we'll never get to see Portal 64 finished is disappointing, but it's so great that we can celebrate what is actually done. This video should not be seen as all doom and gloom. It's a bummer this is never going to get finished, but what we have here is nothing short of some of the best modding work I have ever seen in retro gaming in like the last 15 or so years. The last preview I did, I said that you would believe that Valve made this for the Nintendo 64 and Portal was a game from the late 90s or early 2000s games running on Nintendo 64 hardware. With this First Slice demo, that even feels more true. That statement to me just rings correct. This feels like a proper retail release as far as the graphics, the gameplay, the sound, the menu options, the controls. If this was just presented as a game that existed back in the day, you would remember it as being one of the best Nintendo 64 games of all time. It just happens to not actually be a retro game, it is a modern recreation, and that is the highest compliment I can play to something like this. This feels like one of the best Nintendo 64 games of all time, except it wasn't actually technically a Nintendo 64 game in the first place. And I do hope the developer goes on to making more fun things, especially on the Nintendo 64 side, even if it's not Portal related. And again, this is just down to some of the libraries that this experience uses, and again, this is why modern software development kits that utilize their own functionality without treading on anything that came before it are going to be important moving forward in retro gaming. Now, of course, it just seems to come down to one company all the time that might take issue with it, but there's really not much retro gaming can do about that. It is unfortunate, but it is the reality of things. And I do still feel like, and I've said this before, that the Big N is trying to find some sort of case where they could set a precedent to make emulation and anything like this completely impermissible. It is just my opinion. Again, I'm putting it deeper in the video so people can't say clickbait, but I think that in the next 24 to 36 months, you're going to see something very fundamental happen as far as an attempt to make emulation and anything like this just completely illegal in the United States and pretty much around the world. It's one man's opinion, but it is how I feel. Leave me a comment down below and tell me what you think. Because the current doesn't really seem to be running towards the tide of gamers, but it seems to be running towards the tide of corporations. And that's just kind of part and parcel about how our lives work. They're always trying to make sure that that last penny they can squeeze out gets squeezed into their pockets. But honestly, I'm just glad that what we have here does exist. Portal 64 First Slice will always be out there. You can't really delete anything from the internet. It doesn't work that way. And if you haven't checked it out yet, I can't recommend it enough. This is half of a disappointment video because it'll never be finished, and half of a celebration video because it existed in the first place. Because if you had told me a year ago that someone would have Portal 64 running this well on the Nintendo 64, so well in fact you could run it on the current MiSTer FPGA core as I'm doing now, I wouldn't have believed you. I would have thought the calculations, the math, and everything else that would be needed to do in code would just prove to be impossible on the Nintendo 64 hardware, but obviously we're playing it here and it has been proven to be completely possible. And when Portal first came out in PCs, it blew people away. The level of trickery involved in getting portals into the walls and traversing through the level you were in different directions blew everyone away on PC. And think about how much more powerful the PC was that was base spec to run this game back when it came out versus what the Nintendo 64 has on offer as far as computational power is concerned. The portals in this game work like the portals in the PC game, and that is just something that should absolutely be celebrated. This game may never get finished, it may be dead, but what is here is some of the most mind-blowing stuff you'll see. Seeing Chell through this portal in the wall on Nintendo 64, all the calculations, all the physics on objects, and the frame rate running stable and having a performance that makes it playable is probably one of the most impressive retro gaming coding experiences I have ever seen. But tell me down below what else really blows you away when you see it from the modern lens on retro hardware. But that's kind of the thing with Portal 64. It showed us something that no one would think would be possible, and unfortunately had to die for that cause. And I hope in the future these videos don't end up happening again. Projects being killed or companies going after individuals for doing such basic things. Sure, you can get a glitch here where you can have a companion cube fall through the floor, but the fact that this game is so stable and you have to look for glitches in and of itself is just absolutely wild. But that's the thing. It'll be interesting to see where gaming goes in the rest of 2024 and 2025. I really genuinely do not want to be right. I don't want to have to make another video where I say another thing's been killed or another company's gone after somebody for doing some of the most basic things around, but I feel like that's just where things are heading. And again, if I'm right, I'm sorry. If I'm wrong, I'm happy. But that is the thing about this. There's so many experiences out there to have. There's so many incredible games to play, and there's so many incredible ideas just festering in somebody's head that they would love to realize realized from start to finish. And again, totally not on Valve in this instance. They just probably did not want to be tied to something that was using some component of Nintendo IP that they didn't think was a great idea. You can't blame Valve for saying, we'd really love you not to use our property tied together with this library. It's a little bit of a bummer, but think about how many people make games on other retro hardware. You think if anyone had used a Sega SDK to make a new Dreamcast game, or if somebody had made Portal 64 except called it Portal Dreamcast, if Sega would have done anything, I would highly imagine not. But that's just a presumption. You can tell me what you think down below. But that's kind of the rub of Portal 64. It was here, it lived a life, it lived a great life, and now it is dead, gone, dusted, and we'll have to wait to see what the developer does next. But for what we got with Portal 64, it was nothing short of amazing, and honestly, I'm glad that it lived, even if it did have to die. And I will do more videos like this in the future on topics like this, but it really did originate as a Nintendo 64 FPGA testing video that I had to completely jump into and rewrite on the voiceover side. So you're going to get 13 more minutes of footage of the first slice demo until you see the credits roll, and be aware, that's all you're ever going to see of this project unless anything changes. Short of that, a disappointing video to make, but one I wanted to do. I will see you guys next time. Enjoy and bye-bye.
Certain objects may be vital to your success. Do not destroy testing apparatus. At the Enrichment Center, we promise never to value your safety above your unique ideas and creativity. However, do not destroy vital testing apparatus. As part of a required test protocol, our previous statement suggesting that we would not monitor this chamber was an outright fabrication. Good job. As part of a required test protocol, we will stop enhancing the truth in 3, 2, While safety is one of many Enrichment Center goals, the Aperture Science high-energy pellet seen to the left of the chamber can and has caused permanent disabilities such as vaporization. Please be careful. Unbelievable. You,
Subject name here.
must be the pride of
Subject hometown here.
Warning devices are required on all mobile equipment. However, alarms and flashing hazard lights have been found to agitate the high-energy pellet and have therefore been disabled for your safety. Good. Now use the Aperture Science unstationary scaffold to reach the chamber lock. Please note that we have added a consequence for failure. Any contact with the chamber floor will result in an unsatisfactory mark on your official testing record, followed by death. Good luck. Very impressive. Please note that any appearance of danger is merely a device to enhance your testing experience. The Enrichment Center regrets to inform you that this next test is impossible. Make no attempt to solve it. The Enrichment Center apologizes for this clearly broken test chamber. Fantastic. You remained resolute and resourceful in an atmosphere of extreme pessimism. Hello again. To reiterate previous warning, momentum. Spectacular. You appear to understand how a portal affects forward momentum, or to be more precise, how it does not. Momentum, a function of mass and velocity, is conserved between portals. In layman's terms, speedy thing goes in, speedy thing comes out. The Enrichment Center promises to always provide a safe testing environment. In dangerous testing environments, the Enrichment Center promises to always provide useful advice. For instance, the floor here will kill you. Try to avoid it. The device has been modified so that it can now manufacture two linked portals at once. As part of an optional test protocol, we are pleased to present an amusing fact. The device is now more valuable than the organs and combined incomes of everyone in
Subject hometown, here.
Get Rushbiter, fling yourself. Fling into space. We